Greetings, globeheads and flatards. Tonight I wanted to just make a quick video about a couple of claims that flat earthers make that are just categorically untrue. I thought that I would talk about this in terms of lies that flat earthers tell, but that word can sometimes be misused. When you accuse somebody of lying, you're basically saying that they knew something was untrue and that they stated it anyway. Now, a person can pass on a lie without themselves lying if they believed what they were saying was true. They themselves are not guilty of lying. They are just guilty of passing on a lie. And this can happen if you don't check the veracity of things you hear. Now, there's a lot of semantics here, but I think we should be a little more careful with that word than we often do, because people can be sincere in their beliefs, and that's much different than a charlatan who's intentionally trying to deceive you. But these claims, there's a lot of claims that, or things that flat earthers say that are just obvious misunderstandings. They don't understand how gravity works. They talk about a lot of things in terms of just a complete lack of understanding. But there's a few things that really jump out at me as you're making a statement of fact that is very clearly untrue. And either these people making these claims have not yet discovered Google, where they could very easily verify their claims or find out that they're not true, or perhaps they are intentionally deceiving. The first of these is flat earthers like to claim that stars don't move, other than rotating around the celestial pole, or as they would describe it, maybe rotating around the dome or whatever they look at it. They claim that in relation to each other, the constellations always change, or always stay the same forever and ever and never change. And this is proof that we don't live on a globe that's moving through a solar system that's moving and all this other stuff. This claim is categorically untrue. It was actually Edmund Halley, yes, that Edmund Halley, the same guy that the Halley's Comet is named after, who discovered that stars move. And he discovered this by looking at some old Greek charts of certain constellations and discovering that those constellations no longer look exactly like they did when the Greeks charted them. And so they got to looking into these things, and they figured out the Big Dipper, for example, will not always look like it does. The star at the end of the handle is moving in the opposite direction as the other stars in the constellation. The outer star in the bowl part of the Big Dipper is moving away from the rest. So the mouth of the Big Dipper is actually going to widen over time, and the handle's going to get bent. Also, the North Star, Polaris, is currently our North Star because it's pretty much directly 90 degrees straight up above the North Pole. That has not always been the case. We had a different North Star several thousand years ago, and in a couple of thousand years there will be another North Star again, and it will no longer be Polaris. So these things do change. They change very, very slowly, and I know this is hard for some flat earthers to understand with the speeds that we're talking about, but you also have to understand the distances we're talking about. You can move your finger across in front of your eye slowly, and it is moving, you know, in terms of miles per hour, maybe not even 1 or 2. But it will cross your frame of vision maybe faster than that Boeing 747 you see landing at the airport near your town. And that 747 is going maybe 200 miles an hour. But because it is so massive and it's so much further away, it appears to be moving slower. This is how perception works. The further something away is, the slower its movement appears, because the more vast the distance between point A and point B, and the longer it takes to close that gap relative to our perception. So we do know the stars are moving. We track the movement of the stars, and this is just it's just a fact. So the flat earthers claiming stars don't move in relation to each other are either intentionally misleading you, or they haven't yet discovered how to Google and look it up for themselves. The second one, and this is the one I mentioned probably more than anything else. I have an entire video on it because it almost misled me. I actually started this with an open mind and started looking at this various stuff. And when I was told that flights don't fly between southern hemisphere continents, they always stop in the northern hemisphere, that really kind of threw me for a loop and made me question everything. But that claim is categorically untrue. Qantas Airlines flies between Santiago, Chile, and Sydney, Australia. There is a South American flagged airliner that flies between Santiago and Auckland, New Zealand, and also between Santiago and Sydney. There is a South African airline that flies between Johannesburg and Australia, a couple of different flights. So that is a second claim that's just categorically untrue. Look in my videos and watch my video on Southern Hemisphere flights, and you'll learn more about that. The third thing that I would like to point out is flat earthers make the claim that there is no 24-hour sun in the Southern Hemisphere summer around the Southern Hemisphere South Pole. This is a third claim that's categorically untrue, and I think this one usually is an intentional deception. It is so destructive to the flat earth claim that flat earthers necessarily have to reject it. You can just pull up, do a Google search on that, and you can find tons of video of the sun circling the South Pole during their summer with a 24-hour sun. There is one thing that flat earthers have tried to claim. I've seen a couple videos by flat earthers, and they're really funny. They take this glass dome-shaped thing and put it over their little flat earth map, and then they demonstrate how it will refract the light and make the light look like maybe it's doing that. The problem is that their little dome thing is solid. It's not hollow. You don't get the same kind of refraction with a hollow object. And since we're not breathing solid glass right now, that's kind of a ridiculous claim. There's others. There's other things that are just so obviously untrue, but these are the three big ones to me that I wanted to mention tonight, and they're things that you can verify for yourself. There's a lot of information out there with video evidence and so forth, but the claims that the sun doesn't stay up 24 hours at the South Pole, that there are no flights between South Pole continents, and that the stars don't move in relation to each other are just blatantly false claims. There's a lot of fun to be had out there on YouTube. Enjoy yourself, but don't fall for the snake oil salesman out there.